Hello, everyone. Welcome to the earMUSIC YouTube channel, and today with a very special guest, Joe Satriani, with the official pre-listening of the album coming tomorrow, which is The Elephants of Mars, and a live Q&A after. Joe, how are you?
I am doing great. I see you got the shades. I got the shades.
Mandatory,
Fantastic.
right?
Yes, mandatory. Absolutely.
How have you been? How have the last few months been?
Busy, having fun. As you can see, the room is filled with guitars and amps. And, when I'm playing at home, I don't wear these shades, of course. It's hard enough to see the frets anyway. But actually, it's a funny thing. When you're on stage and the lights are low and you're wearing shades like that, it is really hard to see. So I've learned to practice with my eyes closed just so I get used to that. But yeah, lots of music, lots of painting. Very busy, living the artist's life.
Cool. So you excited about the release tomorrow? How do you think it'll be
Oh yeah,
received?
I can't wait. This has been a long one, a really long burn, a long ramp up to releasing this record. I'm so excited to get people to hear this. As you know, we've been doing lots of interviews the last month or so, and the journalists have been really great in taking the time to absorb the whole album, because it is, in fact, a really big record. It's over an hour long. There are lots of songs on there, 14. But the reception's been fantastic, and I just can't wait for the fans to hear it.
Well, should we kick it off?
Yes.
Should we let them hear it? Okay, everyone, this will be the official pre-listening session for The Elephants of Mars. Please stick around, listen to the record, join Joe and myself afterwards for a live Q&A, and you can feel free to put your questions into the chat while you listen, and we'll be answering them after the session. Enjoy. And we're back. Joe, what a ride.
Wow. Wow.
Intense.
That's, it's crazy when you hear it all go by like that. And, I know every version of every song when it started, like on a little piece of paper or something, or a drawing, and how it went from that to a demo and all the different arrangements, and then hearing all the contributions from all the different band members. But wow, it's intense when you hear it all in sequence like that coming off the vinyl. Wow.
Cool. And the feedback, immense. I mean, you followed the chat too, right?
Yeah, it's great. Oh, it's so great. I'm so happy to see all that. That's really nice.
Yeah, and the one thing I picked up on, or what everyone picked up on, or a lot of people said, was the Grammy thing. And Chris Alexander said, "Go ahead and start writing your Grammy acceptance speech." Could you improvise?
Oh.
Could you improvise one quickly, a short one?
Oh,
how would that go?
I would probably say something like, thank you very much. And then I'd probably launch into something I would regret. So, yeah, it's better not to plan on those kinds of things and just concentrate on the music,
For sure. Carl Daniel asks, are we going to see real elephants? I can't believe NASA have been keeping this one quiet from us. What's the story?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm hoping, I've been looking at this. I mean, I just can't believe when I hold it that Todd Galapos' idea is just so striking. It's so beautiful. We're going to have to bring live elephants on tour. You and I were just talking about that. Forget about the live video camera guy. We're going to need another truck for elephants.
Pink elephants. I loved seeing that documentary as well, on him choosing the design, the colors, the Pantone. That's really
it's
cool.
Fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. Todd works in just mysterious ways, but then it always comes down to little pieces of paper and, a pen, an X-Acto knife. And, I've told people before, like, we've done lots of album covers together. Even I think I first met him doing the very first Chickenfoot album. And when we were doing What Happens Next, he had this idea about putting me in a room full of mirrors, and he actually built the thing. And I had to stand in there for about 4 or 5 hours. This little room with mirrors everywhere, and then a little hole for the photographer to stick his lens. And so, he can do these things in the digital space, but he's totally hands-on, like a real artist, and he can build structures that you actually get into and interact with. So it's always fun, every project we do together.
Sweet. I hope I pronounced the name right. It's Oguz Uzol. Where does the album name come from? Why the Elephants of Mars?
Oh, I had the sound that was, you'd have to say it was some kind of huge snorting alien elephant noise that I had created, and I built a song around it. And when I had put together a bunch of stuff to send to Eric, who was producing the album for me, he had a positive response to this thing. So when I started writing it, I thought I needed some backstory, to complete the whole vision of the song. So I came up with this story. It's the future. Earth scientists figure out a way to terraform Mars. They turn it into a beautiful garden planet. They don't realize they actually created by accident an entire race of sentient, gigantic elephants that can communicate telepathically and play awesome music with their trunks, And they get together with the colonists who's being led by this crazy guitar playing guy. And they decide they're going to start a revolution to take back control of the planet and stop Earth's evil corporations from exploiting it for raw materials. Anyway, I know it's a crazy story, but that's what I came up with. And that sort of informed me how to sort of break sonic boundaries with what I plugged my guitar in and how I dealt with the arrangements. And then as I told the rest of the band, everyone sort of joined in on the crazy idea and started to give us performances that were really great. And all the way to the end, Kenny, Brian, and Ray and Eric, they just did an amazing job.
And it was all recorded remotely, right?
It was, I was in my home studio here in San Francisco. Ray Thistlethwaite was mainly in Australia, sometimes in Tasmania. He was on tour. Brian Beller and Eric Kodia and Kenny Aronoff are in the Los Angeles area, but separated by 100 so miles. The only people that got together, actually, there were two groups at two different times. Kenny, of course, had, he can't record his drums on his own. So, but his studio had a unique setup where the drums were in one area, and then across the hall, he had a separate control room. So Eric could visit and safely record the drums. And then, of course, when the album was mixed, Greg Collar and Eric Kodia got together at John Bryan's studio to mix the album. So, but yeah, I never got together with anybody except when we did the videos with ZZ. So,
which are
very
fantastic.
Record.
Yeah, those videos are fantastic. Everyone's in for a treat tomorrow, right?
Yes, their minds will be blown.
When I saw it, I was like, what's happening? Crazy good. Really, really good. A bit of well, he actually writes serious question. So Leandro De Vera asks, hey Joe, did you ever consider launching your own brand of sunglasses? You put mine back on.
I should. Oh, it's much nicer like this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have been trying for years to get Oakley to, return my calls, but I guess they do just fine without me. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it would be great. The hardest thing for me is to try to figure out how to get the glasses to sit straight, because I must have broken my nose when I was a kid and forgot about it and woke up the next day and just carried on with my life, because they always sit kind of crooked. So I'm always trying to adjust them. So maybe if they make my own line, we'll have to address, that whole thing. But yeah, it's really great when you go on stage and you've got sunglasses on, because then all the lights that are constantly in your face are not bothering you so much. And if you need to look down at the fretboard to figure out where you're going, you can comfortably. So
you just have way more contrast too, right?
I think so. I mean, it's a funny thing. I think back when I had hair, that was sort of like the prop and some funny looking clothes. But once I shaved my head and I started sort of trimming down the crazy outfits, this became the only prop, that kind of goes with the head. And as you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. Joe, can you talk about your love of space and science fiction themes, how it began when you were younger and how it influences your songwriting? This one's by Mike.
Yeah, Mike, certainly. I remember once, I think I was in second grade, and all of a sudden I was sort of awakened out of my spaciness. And I heard the teacher saying, Mr. Satriani, why are you staring out into space? And I realized I was just not paying attention to her, and I was looking out the window. But when she said that, my answer was, you mean I can see outer space from here? And I was fascinated by the thought that she thought that I could see outer space in the middle of the day by looking out of the classroom window. And it dawned on me, even at that young age, that we were in fact in outer space. We weren't, people think they're in their neighborhood, they're in their town, whatever. But actually, we're all in outer space. So we're in science fiction. This is science fiction. There is no difference. So it became a normal kind of everyday language for me to relate to everything I saw as being part of this sort of being in outer space. And I started to read Ray Bradbury and Kurt Vonnegut Jr., Isaac Asimov, and I just went on from there. And I found that there were other people that thought like I did.
Cool. Question from Andres Vega. Joe, does inspiration for new tunes find you more often in your studio or while you're doing non-artistic tasks?
Oh, yeah. It seems like I get musical ideas everywhere. Case in point, the other day, out on the street, there was some house under construction, and they had some just awful machine making some really loud noise, but it generated these two tones. and it was a low note and then an octave of a minor third on top. And I immediately felt that sad, minor third vibe. And it was like a grinding electronic mechanical drone. It was going all through the neighborhood. And I couldn't help thinking that it was making everybody in the neighborhood feel sad. And they probably didn't know it, but you can't just throw musical notes at people and not expect there's going to be a result. I mean, that's what musicians do. We play with notes to create a response from the audience. And I immediately started thinking, well, where do I take this? I want to change this note and move it somewhere else. And I started to compose a piece just about that idea, about a neighborhood being inundated with a really sad, droning set of notes that makes them do crazy things. I'll get back to you on where that song goes.
Awesome. Maybe the new album, right? The next one.
Could be. Could be.
Marco Satri asks, on the title track, which scale do you use? The whole tone scale?
On the title track, the Elephants of Mars is really funny. That doesn't have one scale. It's really odd. I mean, I love collecting scales, and I've studied so many different scales. But I think it's kind of interesting that once you start to learn these scales, again, the idea is when I play this, what is the effect? So it's music is all really cause and effect. There are not really rules, good or bad or right or wrong. It's just cause and effect. So I pick these scales and I play around with the idea that, well, I can just sort of drift in between a couple of different scales, and maybe that drifting creates a new space that one scale can't really get at, because one scale gives you kind of like one result, like minor scale, major scale. But if you've got two and you're telling the listener, I'm not quite sure where this is going yet, you can kind of suspend interest or suspend the idea of the story. So for the solo section, it's sort of like if you took a irreverent rock guitar player and you taught him the symmetrical scale, which is the 8-note scale, and you said, hey, work on this for a little bit. Let's see what happens. And that's kind of like what I did for the long solo section, because I kind of descend into this early 70s rock and roll attitude, but I'm using this scale that those guys never used. And it has a what's the phrase I'm looking for? It has a feeling of like someone doesn't really care about what other people think about them. I don't know. It's a really funny scale. When I hear it, that's what I feel like. It's irreverent. And but the melody, of course, the main melody, the verse melody, has got that major seventh and flat 9. And there are a lot of different scales that use that, but they're not completed the same way that I did. So I put together the symmetrical scale and a couple of others that I thought would create the idea that on Mars, things sound very different. So get ready.
Achieved. Aaron Lee asks, question for Joe. Did anyone from the band bring any ideas that became the main thing, I'm guessing he means theme, of any of the songs in this album?
I would say Eric contributed a lot of great things to the album. Compositionally, there were 3 songs where he brought some really great ideas and real music. So the breakdown section of the Elephants of Mars is actually Eric taking my original guitar solo, reharmonizing all the chords below it, cutting the time in half, and moving a couple of the performance phrases around. When I heard that, I thought, oh, this is really beautiful. And I was thinking about, this is crazy again, but I was thinking, this herd of gigantic elephants. And then all of a sudden it breaks off and you have these female elephants that decide to tell a whole different side of their story about life on Mars and how beautiful the planet is. And then it goes back to these big guys. And so we kind of, we're running with those ideas, but it wouldn't have happened unless Eric had thrown that back at me. And I'm sure he thought, I don't know if Joe's going to like this or not, but I loved it. The other one, which is really a crazy journey, is the last song on the album, Desolation, started from this little, like, couldn't have been longer than a minute and a half song that I sent to Eric. And he turned it into about a 22-minute piece with full-on orchestra. And as I started working on the piece, I got this crazy idea that part one and part two were never going to work. But the last little piece, the last 3 minutes, I really fell in love with. And it just took a long time to figure out what it was that it was inspiring me to think about. And once I got that together, then I approached him with the idea, like, I know you think I'm crazy, but I want to get rid of, like, 17, 18 minutes of this epic piece and just play on this little piece here. So that's really just me reacting to an improvisation that he had done to sort of be a summation of the song that, well, no one will ever hear that part. But it was really great. That way of working with Eric is something that I'm used to doing, because we've been working together since '96. So this was great that this album gave us, the space to do this kind of stuff and to collaborate like this.
Kevin Berg asks, which instrument defined your phrasing the most besides the electric guitar?
Oh, I think about singers and horn players a lot. I guess because, singers and horn players, it's all based on the human breath. And so they have this great ability to ramp in and ramp out. The dynamics they can use are really fascinating. It's different than, obviously, a keyboard player, percussive player, and even to a certain extent, other string instruments. So I'm always thinking, like, if I could get there, like, if I'm doing a song like Faceless, if I can achieve that kind of intimacy, like someone is really right in front of you, right next to you, whispering or whimpering or crying some message in your ear, how would they do that? And how would I capture that on the guitar? So I spend hours trying to figure that out. I think those are the hardest techniques that there are for the electric guitarist, is how to make your instrument sound intimate and truly emotional. The other stuff, the technical stuff, you can just practice and you get it. And you don't even have to think about what you're doing while you're practicing it. You could be doing it and giving an interview or something. But that emotional stuff, that's a lifelong quest.
I feel that you really achieved that on Faceless, personally.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds really vocal in a way, so maybe those hours were well spent.
Good. It's funny, that song has such an unusual arrangement because it has a long introduction, and the first verse is so short. I think that's the shortest verse I've ever written, and then it goes right into the chorus. So there are a lot of things about all the songs on the album where I really tried to create a more creative approach to arrangements. That was another thing that was high on my list when I started working on this record, was to make sure that the arrangements were unique and super creative, and that they would stand out in the catalog as being special.
Sweet. There's a question here. What an awesome recording. Also love the artwork and vinyl colors. What are these cards? Are they part of the artwork?
Yes. We started to think about how we could introduce the idea and the stories behind the songs more completely. And so the team at earMUSIC and Todd Galafo and myself got together with the idea of combining some of my artwork. But I didn't really want to just do paintings, because, I do a lot of paintings, but I hadn't done any paintings about each of these songs specifically. So the way that we approached it was, Todd asked me to write a few paragraphs about what the songs were about. And when I sent him those, he also went and he went to the Wentworth Gallery that are that have over 100 of my paintings. And he started to look at paintings to see if there were parts of them that would relate to these stories that I had written for him. And what he focused on was the paintings where I had done what we call alien writing. And this is stuff I'd been working on since I was a kid. And it's just a different language that I would imagine that people from a distant planet would use to express themselves. And he thought that was a great way to bring in the idea of Mars and this alien writing and the meanings of the song. So I really left it to him to come up with a group of what would you character, because they're kind of hieroglyphic or script. I'm not sure what it is, how you would categorize it, but he picked a bunch of them and then presented them to me, like, which ones do you think are really going to work? And then we put them together with images that we thought in the background would, again, go with the idea that you're now on this newly terraformed Mars, and there are going to be these new environments with these special messages. So that was a great part of the project. I really, really found that to be a lot of fun.
Sounds super interesting. That ties in with a question here. Another question from Leandro. How do you feel about actually traveling to space? Would you ever go on one of those SpaceX Blue Origin trips?
You know, I got to say, I'm still so disappointed in the present, because when I was a kid, I thought, well, you know, if I ever make it to a ripe old age, there better be like flying cars and gravity defying boots, and and we should be traveling on space ladders to outer space in minutes. And and here we are, and it's terrible. We're still burning like, I don't know how many thousands of gallons of fuel just to get through the atmosphere for a couple of minutes and just to pop on down. I mean, I don't see the fun in that. I mean, imagine if somebody said to you, would you like to go to Europe? Oh, by the way, you'll just be flying over it for 12 minutes.
Yeah,
You'd be like, well, I'll wait until I can actually land. So that's the way I feel about it. I'm very disappointed that the scientists haven't figured out a way to get us to travel through space and to traverse light years so we can actually get somewhere, because we are in the middle of nowhere, by the way. It seems like everybody in space, in the universe, is in the middle of their own private nowhere. And so the distances are incredible.
Yeah.
And they haven't solved any of that. And so as a little kid watching Star Trek, I just thought, well, when I get to be William Shatner's age, of course, I'll have my own private.
Get these. Right?
Oh, that's true. We did get those, yeah. But yeah. So yeah, I don't think I'm gonna. No, I'm not gonna do the SpaceX thing. That's just not interesting enough for me.
Okay, let's go for the next one. Question from Super Chicken 77. What are your favorite meals with your beautiful Rubina?
First of all, I love that name, Super Chicken. Wow. I think that we here in San Francisco, we are so lucky that there is an international, food fair like every day. Wherever you go, you can get food from just about anywhere in the world. So we keep it, we rotate, we keep it interesting all the time. And so one night it's Italian, the next night it's Singaporean. You never know.
Sweet. Question from Kev Dixon. What are you most proud of regarding the album?
Well, I tell you, I am so proud of the work that everybody did on it. I mean, you can imagine, getting a text from me saying, hey guys, I'm sending you guys a song, for fun, and it's called Through a Mother's Day Darkly. And then, in minutes, I get texts back from around the world saying we should do this on the album. And then, a couple of weeks later, I'm starting to get performances by these incredible bandmates that feel so inspired, to contribute great performances and help get these songs, together. And now it's here. I mean, it's just like, wow, I have an album, and I just, I'm humbled by it, by the work that they did, and their performances are just so amazing. So I know the record is a great record because of all their efforts.
And such a cool lineup. I mean, we talked
Yeah,
about,
right.
about Ray briefly before we went live. So yeah, really excited to see that go live too.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we'll hit the road. We'll have Kenny Aronoff on drums, Brian Beller on bass, Ray Thistlethwaite on keyboards, and I'll be there too. I guess I'll play some guitar with my glasses on. Of course, I'll have
Of
these on,
course, no, let
so
me
you
give
know
mine
what I
another
look like.
spin. Bought them for this interview only. Might as well wear them. um, there's a question from Satriani 18.
Yeah.
Amazing album, Joe. Can you tell us the story behind the song Echo? Also, you played the song a lot in your early days, but will we hear this legendary song again on tour maybe?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you like that. Yeah, that song. Wow, we recorded that at Hyde Street Studios, and I think it was that particular song was probably mostly recorded down the hall in Studio D. And you have to imagine downtown San Francisco in the Tenderloin, not a great neighborhood, but this iconic building, the High Street building. And it had, at the time, I think 4 studios were working within the building. And that album and that song probably had work done in 3 of the rooms. The main room was C and D, but it may have been mixed, finally mixed in Studio A at about 4:15 in the morning or something like that. But that song was really about a person that was being remembered in a family by giving that name to the next child that arrived. And I thought it was a really wonderful story. And it was a personal story and a connection that I had through friends. And the reason why I played the way I did and phrased the melody was to somehow create the effect rhythmically of a return, of an echo of something that had happened previous. But I didn't want to use, tape echo or an effect. I had to come up with a melody that had that sort of repetition in it. I have vivid memories of the technicalities of it. It was a guitar that my wife and I had painted, and we were responding to. I remember we had come across a Vogue magazine that had an article about Jean-Michel Basquiat in it, and they were calling it neo-expressionism. And I think one afternoon we thought, oh, we can do that. So we took a white Stratocaster body I had, and we just went crazy with it. And Gary Brower and Leon Knapp had outfitted the guitar with some really unusual pickup configurations. And I brought it to the studio that day, and we recorded all those beautiful, clean guitars, the harmonics. We plugged into a Roland JC120 and recorded it in stereo, and limited it, put it through a limiter before we actually went to tape, which was a risk, but we liked the sound of what it was doing. And I think I had a Boss DS1 in between the guitar and the JC120. I know this is way too technical for most people, but these are the things I remember so well about how great it sounded in Studio D. I would stand on the couch in front of the big speakers and have John Cuniberti turn it up really loud. And that's how I recorded almost everything in that studio, because that was the sweet spot. Take my shoes off, stand on the couch with the big monitors up really loud. And that's how I recorded that song.
Cool. There's another song title related question here that I'm quite interested to. 2 comments on it. First one is from Teng Zhang. Hi Joe, what's the story behind East 104th Street, NYC? And then there's a second one. David Vincent Powell, East 104th. Is that guy still there selling notes at the White Castle? Are these related?
Oh, that's so funny. White Castle. Oh my God. Um, uh, that address, not exactly, but that address between First and Second Avenue in Manhattan is where my father was born and raised. And so the song is really a reflection of many years. And I had to pick a central time. I had to somehow, put my finger down on the calendar and say, well, what moment in time kind of sums up my whole experience there. So you can imagine as a little kid, really, I would go there every Sunday to visit my grandparents and my cousins, and we would have fun out on the street. And it was just your typical New York City, Spanish Harlem vibe. But in 1970, I turned 14. I become a guitar player. I start to realize what's really happening in the world because I'm growing older. I realized that New York City is a really rough and tumble place. It's really crazy. And the 70s in New York City just was really crazy. It was just on this super economic decline that ended in bankruptcy, and it was crazy and dangerous, but it was a lot of fun. And I was the right age to have a lot of fun. And so me and my guitar and all my friends had so much fun in the city, going to the Fillmore and Madison Square Garden and Central Park and seeing everybody from Steve Miller to John McLaughlin, and just had a great time. And I had to, eventually, before the end of the 70s, I had moved out to California. So that whole period sort of crystallized in that little area. I guess 73 seemed to be like the moment where I could really look back and look forward. It was kind of like right in the middle of it. So yeah, the song is really a vibe of what it would be like. Clubs used to stay open till 4. So if you had a gig playing in a club, you'd work till 4 a.m. And then when they closed the door, you'd be there on stage and maybe you'd do a little jam with your friends. And that's kind of like what it would sound like.
Cool. Question here from SR01237. Joe, if Steve Vai left you alone with the Hydra guitar, what's the first song you'd attempt to play on it?
Well, I wouldn't try to play that one. I mean, Steve is just so wonderfully insane. I mean, what a genius, right? It's funny. We were doing an interview last week, and I just as a joke, I got some painter's tape and I stuck together a couple of necks and things like that just to show him that I was that I had the idea first somehow. But that's a perfect example of Steve thinking like nobody else. And boy, the first thing when I saw that was I said, Steve, you're not going to stand up with that thing, are you? Because he's already got issues, with his shoulder. And so we were talking about how he was going to go on tour with that thing. He's got to put it on a stand somehow, and it's got to kind of wheel out. But he sent me videos of him playing the parts, just casually, showing me how he did it. It's really just amazing. I could never do that.
It even has an Instagram page I saw, I think, and it just shows all the parts.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's so funny that we've known each other since we were little kids and went to the same school, and of course I taught him guitar for a couple of years, but he was such a great student. We became guitar playing brothers really soon, and just the fact that we're still here and we get to play our guitars all the time is really amazing. We always marvel at that and how fortunate we are that we get to do that. So every time that we've got something new that we're working on, we're the first two that communicate before we show the rest of the world. We say, hey, check this out, Yeah.
So there were pretty much two dreams, right? The space one and the guitar one.
Oh, yeah. I guess so. Yeah. But I would, if I had that guitar here, the first thing I would think of is, who's going to change all those strings? My God, it better come with a free technician, right? And a string deal.
Yeah. Question from Pixel Pusher Pro, which I like. Can you tease what the light and stage show will be like on the tour? And is ZZ going to help with some visual stuff?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I'm not really sure how we're going to get it all worked out. And maybe I'll consult the my little Bob Ross here. I'm sure he'll be able to help out. uh, I don't really know like how we're going to structure the sets yet. Um, I just thought, well, let's get the record released and let a couple of weeks go by, because we have two albums that we never brought to the stage. And
yeah,
everybody in the band is thinking, wow, how are we going to do this? This is so unusual that, you know, they're shape shifting and the Elephants of Mars, and we have to somehow bring it to the stage, but still do the catalog stuff that we love playing, and bring out some songs we've never played before, and make sure that we focus on the new talents in the band and the fact that it's a new rhythm section. And, you know, Ray can play all kinds of things and he can sing like crazy. So I haven't thought about it, but I know that once we're done with this, I'll probably go, yeah, I guess I got to start thinking about that. It's a good question.
there's one here from Sylvie Rocks, which kind of ties into the previous question. Is there a possibility that you and Steve Vai will make a record together?
I bet there is. Yeah, I know that we've been talking about getting together next year for a G3 with Eric Johnson. So maybe once we get out there on tour, we can start talking about that.
Sweet. Two questions from the same person. Let's pick this one. Shivayan Roy. Hey Joe, I wanted to ask what's been your biggest influence to make such amazing music and even get through the tougher times in life? Also, could you please give a shout out to my bro Sid? He's a massive fan.
Hey Sid, how's it going? Good question. You know, you kind of answered the question in a way. Life is so crazy and it's hard, and so that is, in my mind, that is the material. I mean, it's unbelievable what happens every minute in everybody's life, and I've always felt this urge, this need to interpret all this stuff into music somehow. And you know, I don't discriminate when I feel really happy about something silly or really sad about something truly tragic. I just apply myself to the inspiration as it comes and I finish it. So if I get the idea that I get visited by an alien and I take him surfing, it's obviously a silly idea, but it's attractive to me for some reason. And I'll just go with it until I hear music back coming from my fingers that matches that excitement, that inspiration. But yeah, sometimes I'm writing about loneliness, sadness, you know, being lost, being fascinated by things in the real world or things that I'm imagining. So it just seems like there's never enough time to get to all of the inspirations. That's the toughest thing, really, is to make time for all of it.
A question from Michelle Quarty. Is it true that Joe recorded his guitar parts on this album using only plugins?
Yes. It really surprised me, because I started out thinking I'm going to use like all those amps that are behind me and all the others I've got. And I started to actually, you know, record direct, but then use John Cunaberti's reamp device to reamp all of those direct performances through all those amps, my Fenders, Marshalls, Peavies, and I recorded them. They were there, but also what was alongside of all of these was a version of that DI performance using the old Avid plugin, the Sans amp, for their earliest version of the PSA 1. And they make the Sans amp makes a Tech 21. They make a pedal now like this, which is really great. This is really cool. But I did use that plugin, just that one, for all the guitar sounds. And we didn't really realize it until we had finally mixed the album. And Eric and I were talking about some technical points, and we said, wow, do you realize that every guitar sound was just that one plugin. Like, we didn't use all the other cool modeling things we had. We didn't use any of the reamped guitar sounds that I had recorded. And I should point out that our mix engineer, Greg Collar, would take those performances using the Sansan plugin. He'd pull them off and run them through, like, you know, Fairchild limiters. Those things are like 50 grand a piece. And, Les Paul's original LA2A, just beautiful limiters. And they, you know, those things would really warm the guitar sound up and then put it back into Pro Tools. So, but having said that, it's a great plugin. I mean, that from the cleanest guitar sound to the craziest, dirtiest, that plugin is pretty useful. Yeah, it's just a fantastic plugin.
My mind's blown pretty much right now. Would not have expected the answer.
Yeah.
We've got a question here. We'll move on to the final 2 or 3 questions. Is that okay with you, Joe?
Yeah.
We've got a question from David Vincent Powell. What advice could you give anyone for writing a song? How to start, melody or chord progression?
Oh, yeah. There are no rules. So you basically have to figure out what you're trying to write about. At least that's what I do. I know there are great writers out there who can construct from a very analytical musical way. In other words, I want to write a song at 120 beats per minute, and it's got to use 4 chords, and the first one's got to be major, and the chorus has to hit by 45 seconds. I get that whole thing about songcraft, and I admire it. However, if you're asking me, how does Joe Satriani write a song? It's all about, what am I writing about? A person, a place, an event, something I've imagined, something I experienced, any combination of all that. And I try to take that feeling, that little movie that's happening in my head about whatever subject I'm writing about. I try to get it matched up with whatever comes first, the groove, the chords, the melody. And every song seems to be different. I don't seem to be able to lean on a method, used for every song.
That's a pretty interesting answer, because I had that feeling on the Elephants of Mars when we were listening to it, like the diversity in the tracks and like the storytelling through the music. It's there. It's good.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Okay, we'll go with one more here. We've got a question from, I didn't copy the name, but hi Joe, I wondered how your relationship with gear has changed over the years, and also a quick shout out to my bro Pete, who's a big fan and would be appreciated.
All right. Well, hello Pete. Shout out to Pete. When I started playing guitar, the guitar felt so uncomfortable, and I think the idea is always trying to figure out how to make the gear more comfortable so that I can apply myself. There's nothing worse than when you have all this music inside and you pick up an instrument and for some reason it resists your coaxing. It's just resists you to the point where you can't get your emotions out on it, and you can't show people all that you can do. So over the years, I've had to teach myself, like, what is the difference between all the different fret sizes, for instance, and how that affects the way I play personally. I know how some people like teeny frets, some people like jumbo frets, but what does it mean to me? Because I know I've got these, I'm the only person with these fingertips, so I've got to find the frets that work with this, and then what fretboard wood do I prefer? Maple, ebony, rosewood. What body weight or body consistency? What kind of wood do I favor? And that has a lot to do with the sound I make when I pick. So the simple answer is that I've gotten very close to all the technologies that are responsible for making instruments and amplifiers, because I've had to, because I'm trying to make the distance between me and the audience as short as possible. So that means eliminating cables, eliminating anything that stops the personality on these fingertips from getting all the way to my fans. And that's quite a thing. I mean, that never stops, I don't think. But right now I'm feeling good because the instruments like that are hanging out in this room right now are the ones that allow me to express myself. So, I cherish them.
Cool, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I cannot wait for everyone to see the video to the Elephants of Mars tomorrow.
Yeah, your minds will be blown. Oh my God, ZZ really.
How long did that take? Just before we finish up.
Well, I have to say the shooting took one day, and ZZ is extremely organized. So he must have started at 8 a.m. With the actors, and typical musicians. We showed up in the afternoon. And did our bit. It was all green screen and shooting with a 360 camera. It was really fun. It was just so much fun, And then the editing, though, however, I'm sure that I've got to say maybe 2 weeks, because he did a lot of it at Los Angeles, and then he came up here, I think, for the last week of editing. So he could just make sure I wasn't going to totally freak out when I saw it. But I loved everything, and the crazier the better. And he just took it so far. It's great, and it's a great take on this whole idea of elephants and Mars and everything. And I don't want to spoil it for people, but when you get to see it, you'll be watching it a million times to try to catch every little thing that's in there, because it's really exciting.
Cool. Well, that goes live tomorrow at 9 o'clock CET for us, or CEST here in Europe, and 12 p.m. PST. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So do catch that. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for letting us all listen to the album the day before.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And there's another event tomorrow, right? What time is that?
Yes. Probably around that time you just mentioned, probably around noon. I think we get started here about 11 o'clock maybe, to set it all up, because we'll all be chatting together, the whole band, along with ZZ. And so, that'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. All the best. Happy release day for tomorrow. And a big thank you to everyone who tuned in today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody at earMUSIC. You guys are great. Thank you.